Good afternoon. My name is Scott Hicks. I'm Director of the Teaching and Learning Center at UNCP. I'm joined today for this session, Resilient Pedagogy Implementing a Low-Tech Classroom, with Dr. Miko Nino of Online Learning here at UNCP. Dr. Nino, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Scott. Always a pleasure sharing the virtual stage with you. Always happy to share some tips with our faculty members. Welcome, everyone.
That's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about some strategies for engaging your learners in a very low-tech, low-budget classroom. We're going to give you a range of strategies that involve free apps or lack of devices, both. We're going to talk about some different ways to think creatively about how to be resilient in pedagogy. So, I'm going to start off with a couple strategies before turning it over to Dr. Nino. First, I want us to pretend that we're so low tech that all we have are ourselves. We don't have a classroom, we don't have a chalkboard, we don't have a whiteboard, we don't have anything. So, the low tech, low budget strategy that I want to talk about first is dance, learning through dance, moving ourselves and learning and making things sort of embodied and personal. So, a couple years ago at a conference that I attended at NC Central University with Dr. Laurel Malone, who leads their teaching and learning center, we took part in a dance to learn about photosynthesis. And this is something that she's helped K-12 educators use as well as college educators, and using dance or movement in their classrooms to emphasize key ideas. So as a group, as the conference attendees, we learned how about photosynthesis by making a dance. She had volunteers come up and they became Chloro and Phil, two individuals for Chloro and Phil. She told the group that they had a story to share, how they would be able to make food from water and oxygen and sunlight. So, as the Chloro and Phil were at the beginning of the room saying their names, Chloro and Phil, and moving around and jumping around, she brought in some more people. She brought in water and sunlight and CO2. So she brought up three people who became C, O, and 2, and they began to chant and jump around C and O and 2. And then she brought in some water and she had students come up, or us as conference attendees. We were H2 and O, and we began to chant H2 and O. And we began to sway like raindrops because we were supposed to be the rain. We kept saying sprinkle, sprinkle, or trinkle, trinkle, which was sort of funny to say, but it got us laughing, it got us moving. The plant also needed sunlight. So then some students came up to sort of weave and ray behind the chloro and fill and in front of the rain. The sun is behind, and they were waving their arms and they were saying, I'm bright, I'm bright. The sunlight was coming down and filtering onto the plant. And then we had other students come up, or other members of the audience come up, and they became the dirt. This was a wonderful role, Dr. Malone explained, for someone who's shy, who doesn't want to be the center of attention. This is someone who would be near the feet of those who are standing and moving around, pretending to pile dirt onto the roots of chloro and fill, because the plant was grounded in the earth. What was so wonderful about this activity was it was so musical. We were all chanting these things and making our own rhythm, making our own percussion, making our own melodies. It was very repetitive. And so we began to see like the cycle of photosynthesis where water and sun and earth and CO2 sort of combine in a circle by which the plant makes food. As we began to think about the ending of that process, we thought about sugar. Plants make food in the form of sugar, C6H12O6, for example. And so our C, our O, and our 2, and our H, and our 2, and our O, we had more students come up to be hydrogen and carbon and oxygen, and they began to group off by 6 and 12 and 6 to replicate the glucose or sugar molecules that were created. And in that space, they began to chant, I'm sweet, I'm sweet, I'm sugar, I'm sugar, 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 sugar. So it's a wonderful way for us as a conference attendees to learn about strategies that are low tech, that we can implement in any setting, that we can use only our bodies and our voices to do. And as I told Dr. Malone recently, it's something that stuck with me. I better understand photosynthesis now because of what we did, the memories we made, the way we imprinted those memories through movement. So I wanted to start with that example. I wish I had a video of it. I'm sure it would go viral, of our group at that conference a few years ago doing that activity. But again, there are ways to make your teaching into dance or movement. in which we use all the skills of our students. We can do this online as well. This is an activity that could adapt quite nicely to a Zoom or WebEx platform. So, this is one way to start. Another thing I want to say before I turn it over to Miko is the notion of team building, or the notion of using team building activities to engage learners. So, in a cohort that Sandy Jacobs and I are leading for service learning, we want our participants to think about how to be creative, how to sort of put out of mind what they've done before so as to create new things and to do so together. We want them to think about new service learning activities. So, one of our activities as we meet fully remotely, fully virtually, was to have all the attendees come to our Zoom meeting with an item, a random item. We told them nothing more than to come to the meeting with an item. Then we placed our members into breakout rooms. We had two breakout rooms, and we assigned each group the task of coming up with a service learning project based on the items that they had assembled together. So each person had to share their item, and then working together, they had to create something new from those items. We found that this was a really low tech way, used only a breakout room in WebEx and found objects that the individuals had around their homes. We found it was a wonderful way to force our participants to think of new things. They had no idea what other people were bringing, and they had to think about ways to work together and imagine together a new project. And at the end of it, we had two very different ideas for what could be done, what kind of service learning project could be done with those items. But what was so fascinating about it was that the individuals worked together, but also created something new, which was our learning goal for that day, was to think about new ways of doing service learning that they could then take to their own service learning projects. So again, low tech, we needed only Zoom or WebEx. We only needed our participants to be able to find an item or an object around their home, and the ability then to work together as a team to facilitate that learning or that connection that we then use to scaffold the next part of that discussion, what it is we would be doing, how we could recreate service learning and make it new. So, Miko, I want to turn it over to you. You wanted to share some strategies and some apps that we all might use these days.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hicks. Yes, that's correct. I'm going to be showing you a couple things that are free. I mean, all of them are free. All of them you already have been using them. So it's learning how to switch, the strategy a little bit and how to incorporate new ideas. I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to start with something very simple, which is PowerPoint. PowerPoint has the ability for you to create experiences that go beyond the lecture. We all use PowerPoint just for a lecture, just to put our bullet points and all of that. But if you are teaching online or even face to face, let's say that you have a face to face class, there are experiences that you can create to flip the classroom so your students check the materials before they come to the classroom, but they also have the ability to, let's say, as an assignment, complete something outside the classroom or even during the time that you are in the classroom. So these strategies technically can apply for both environments. What happens with this template, and I'm going to share with you our website that has lots of templates that you can modify. It's using PowerPoint to tell stories. We sometimes complain that all we can do with PowerPoint is record a lecture and that's it. But there are other things that we can do, and storytelling is wonderful. When you create this experience in PowerPoint, in order for this to work, you have your students to put it in presentation mode and they navigate it like that. So basically, this is a story. You incorporate the picture of the character. I'm gonna go and start. Yep. So you introduce your character, and through all the slides and the transitions, you're gonna be telling the story of what happened to this character or this situation. And again, here the tricky part is how you embed the content into your story, but that's completely doable. So she was a good coworker and all of that. You tell the story, but why I suggest you doing this? Because as the story unfolds and we reach a turning point, you will have the ability to present a problem, a dilemma, and then your learners will have to then make decisions based on that. And based on the decisions that they make on they click, let's say that click number one is gonna take me to one slide, and you put the content that you want them to create. And then you continue, you explain the consequences of you, or you get feedback for option number one. But if they decided to go for number two, it will take them somewhere completely different. If they took number two, it will take them to another slide. And I'm gonna show you how you can do that as well. But this is one example, basically. Creating a story in PowerPoint, you stop along the way, you make the learner reflect, they can click on the PowerPoint, and then the story continues and you get feedback. People love to interact with these kind of scenarios or stories. So that's one example. This is something that I have shown before in other sessions, but if you haven't attended my sessions, I'm gonna go ahead and show you again. It's similar principle in nature. It's PowerPoint. You click because you
Please
create a
remember,
button.
your first assignment is due on Monday. Have a great weekend.
And automatically I created a surface module, and I embedded a video because I wanted, to catch the attention, to gain attention. And I ask them if they experience this or not, and whatever they answer is gonna take them to a different slide. But I bring the learners at the same point regardless. I add elements of what other people have said. I talk about the goals for this module. I add scenarios. This is something that I did many years ago. Even for today's standards, that video is quite scandalous, but I don't regret because it really, really achieved the goal of make the people wake up and connect with the content. But anyway, I asked the learners to reflect before I give the answer. So I presented a scenario illustrating the definition. Then I asked them to think about that video. And then, and only after that, I provide the definition. So it's been more of a constructivist here, allowing the learner to build, to interpret, to construct the knowledge first. And that's, cheating. That's the first one. Then they click here.
Mark, I need to talk to you about the research paper you submitted.
And I go to another illustration with another video. I illustrate the second instance, I make them reflect about that instance, and then I define that second instance. And I continue like that. I have videos, I have cases. For this one, instead of a video, I decided to make up a scenario. You have no idea the power of case-based learning. I'm sure many of you have adopted that. But if you want a validation from somebody who has also implemented that and work with other faculty, I'm very strong into selling scenarios. You embed your content into these wonderful stories, dramatic stories at times that you create, and you really engage and make the learners engage more, and you can really see if they're applying the knowledge of your class. So all of that is just done with PowerPoint. So you're moving away from just a template of recording a lecture to something more interactive. So this is another example in PowerPoint. I'm gonna show you another one. And again, after this, I'm gonna show you how this is achieved. It's very simple. And I'm gonna also share with you a website for you to access these templates. Again, always you have to put this on presentation mode. And sometimes steps are very important to let them build in the mind of the learner in one spot. You don't want them to move through multiple slides. You want them to keep very present all the steps in one slide, and then you have to have the ability for them to make connections and comparison and contrasts. So with this slide, they click on each step and automatically it shows them the definition for that step. So if you have a process or you have a timeline or you have something that they need to go step by step in PowerPoint, they can get what they need. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you about something. Sometimes we lecture for a whole hour. And at the end, what we really want to accomplish is they knowing those 6 steps. We might be hesitant about, summarizing everything into one slide, into one diagram like this, because we are used to do things in a traditional way, believing that the lecture is going to give more information, which in a sense is true. I'm going to give you that. But you have to be mindful about something. Knowledge that is not practiced right away or within a couple days after it's delivered is going to be forgotten. Only 25% of the knowledge from a lecture that we get to practice is what stays in the brain. So yes, we believe that we deliver lots of content in 1 hour, but not all of that content is going to stay in the brain. We don't have that ability, unfortunately. That's the nature of the human brain. Therefore, it's very important that you take the risk sometimes and present the content in diagrams like this, because you have a higher chance of making the knowledge travel to the long-term memory, and you have higher chances of this staying in the mind of the learner, more so than with a 1 hour lecture. Now, I love lectures and there's value in doing them. So by no means I want you to stop doing them. It's just like sometimes it's okay to switch to an alternative like this. And again, this is just PowerPoint, very easy. You can use this template because this is open access and change the text to whatever you feel is necessary for your class. And you can change the picture, the titles, the colors, very easy. Another one that I want to show you, this is a great example also. And again, you have to put them always in presentation mode. It's timelines like this for historical events, for processes, for steps, and the learner gets to interact with all of the steps, and you can provide a definition. But building this kind of relationship this sends a stronger message through the brains and the neurons, and the representation of knowledge becomes more powerful, therefore stays longer, and you have higher chances of retention as well. So again, there might be one topic in your whole class that you might decide just to deliver like this in an effort for your students to remember the timeline better. And again, think about ways in which this template can be changed for your particular course. Another example is flashcards. I love flashcards because sometimes you want to make sure the learner has a good definition for each word. Like, I'm going to give you an example. In my field, you really need to know what's constructivism versus cognitivism. You just have to know that by definition. You need to know what's a terminal objective, enabling objective, without looking at notes. When you have knowledge in your course that they have to memorize, because it's very important that they know, flashcards with keywords is very important. So they click on the keyword and it automatically provides a short and concise definition. Sometimes instead of a definition, you can give an example. Examples are also very good for them to memorize and master the term, you know? Or you can use just one big term and provide essential characteristics and examples. So let's say that you have something and you have 8 characteristics for that word. You can provide here, instead of keywords, short description of the characteristics. And when they click, a picture, an image, or an example shows up. Okay, so I really like this one as well because of that. So you wonder how these things happen. Again, you can use the templates if you desire, but at the same time, I want to show you something that you can do if you want to build them from scratch. So let's say that you have your PowerPoint built here, correct? I'm gonna add another slide. And I wanna create these navigations, these experiences for the learner to navigate and so. All you have to do is you come here to insert, and you're gonna choose text box, and you're gonna draw your box. And I'm gonna put here, let's change the color because obviously it's not gonna look here in black. I'm gonna change the design here first. Okay. Oh, that didn't work here. So let me just change then the color of the text. Perfect. So option number one, I put the textbook option number one. You put the text for the dilemma and all of that. I'm gonna change that color so it looks like a button. I'm gonna make it red. And then I can have another one. I'm gonna just copy and I'm gonna paste to make sure they're on the same size. And then I can have option number two. So let's say that, or you can change to something more clear, like, are you agreeing with this scenario? You can put yes or no. After that, you're gonna right click on the button, and then you click hyperlink. Then you make sure it's this document option. And it can go to any slide that you want. So if they pick yes, I want them to go to gain attention. And you hit OK. And if they say no, I go to hyperlink. I want them to go to establish milestones. So you have to create all the content first for all the options, and then you decide how the navigation is gonna go. So when people come here and they click on yes, it's gonna take them to the slide that I chose, and then the path can continue. And you can bring the learner to any place on that slide deck. And you have to tell them that in order for this to make sense, they have to always have it in presentation mode. That way you don't have to worry about them skipping and not understanding. You have to be very clear about that. So if they click no, it takes them somewhere completely different. So there are tools that can do this, Storyline, Captivate, but I wanted to show you with Scott here, low tech, something free, something simple, something that you can use and that you're familiar with. So I'm gonna show you something that is gonna become your best friend. It was my best friend, it's still my best friend, but it was especially my best friend when I started my career developing content. I started developing content, and it's called eLearning Heroes. eLearning Hero is free and it's open, meaning that you can use anything that you see here without any worries for copyrights or legal rights, anything like that. And you can give back to the community. If you create a really cool template and you want to use it, you can go ahead and do that as well. If you click on downloads, you can create an account. This is free. And you go to templates and you go to PowerPoint, you will find many examples. And what I like is that some of them are very cool. All the programming, so to speak, is done for you. So you can see the flashcards, it's here, the one that I show you. The flashcard is already here. See? So you can access them all and you can customize them to the content of your class. You can change the pictures, you can change the characters, anything that you want. They have many scenarios, but if you don't want it to be for doctors, it can be for professors, can be for students. You just change the person. They have infographics. Infographics are huge, and you don't have to worry about the templates if you come here. And that's, one of the wonders that you can do with PowerPoint. I really encourage you to create those interactive experiences. Students love them, they're really easy to make. I'm going to stop now here to take some comments or questions if you might have any. Okay, any questions so far? No? Okay, feel free to type any comments that you might have later on. So that's basically one of the main things that I suggest that you do with PowerPoint from now on. Can you show us one of the PowerPoints you mean from the downloads here? Because, okay, so I'm gonna give you an example. They want to see one from here. Well, the ones that I show you, several are here, but I'm gonna go here and click on this medical scenario. You click download, automatically you have access for that. And when you open here, I'm sure if I play here, I click on continue, it's gonna take me, they have choices. If I click delivering bad news, it brings something. If I click disagreement with the patients, you know. So you can change these to make it fit for your class if you want to. Yeah. It's very easy to use, as I said, because it's PowerPoint. If you, again, this is an overview. If you're interested in learning more about PowerPoint, that's something that we can discuss. No, not possibility of copywriting, because this is, again, if you get it from e-learning heroes, it's completely fine to use, because that's the purpose of the community, for people to be open and offer resources to everyone. And they know that you're going to customize. So you don't have to worry about that. Excellent questions, because that's always a concern, a valid concern. There are animations that you can put in certain things for them to add movement to the boxes and all of that. And what happens with this one is basically the same slide that you copied 3 times. It's just like in each one of them, you're gonna add text for the first one, or for the second one, or for the third one. And what happens is, like, when you hyperlink, and when you hyperlink here, it goes to the slide that you decide to show this part. But it looks like only this side moves, but basically the whole slide moves. So you repeat, you copy and paste the 3 slides the same, you change the text based on the choice, and you hyperlink a different slide because they're identical. And this is the funny part. Looks like you have like a very, very fancy interaction, but in fact what happens is that you are going through 3 different slides, but you cannot really tell. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it's very simple. It's very simple, but the outcome is great. Yeah, so yeah, start exploring with PowerPoint. Email me, Terry, Kristen in our office. We are happy to help you with those advanced options for PowerPoint. And again, e-learning heroes, if you are not part of this community, I really encourage you to join. Lots of resources for you. It's not only templates. They have templates, but they also have course assets. So in course assets, you will find backgrounds, graphics, fonts, icons, like many things that you can use to incorporate into PowerPoint for free and make the experience more engaging. Even if you're recording a lecture or a video and you're having voiceover, you want to make it like a cartoonish kind of look, which is something that I have done in the past. And even adults, we enjoy every now and then a cartoon, and people sometimes are learning without even realizing that. You can change the backgrounds. They have offices, they have meeting rooms, they have hospitals, they have cafeterias. I mean, you name it. The possibilities are endless, and they keep adding stuff. They have classrooms. So really cool. The buttons, if you are struggling to create fancy buttons, all of that. E-learning heroes, free, easy to access. You're going to love it. Okay, so I'm gonna move now to another tool that I love. It's called Padlet. And you have a free option and a pro option. I always use free. Sometimes I use pro, but you can make wonderful things with free. Now, keep in mind that when I say low technology, we still have some technology in there. When I say low, it's that you don't have to worry about the bandwidth. You don't need to have the fanciest of the fastest internet. When I say low technology, I make sure I pick things that any internet connection is going to make the experience work well. So from now on, I'm going to show you a couple of other tools, but you don't have to worry about crazy requirements or prerequisites for your computer, anything like that. So Padlet has multiple opportunities for you to collaborate and to create instruction that can be very graphic in nature. So I'm going to make a Padlet. When you click make a Padlet, that's what you're going to see. So this is your homepage once you create your account. Okay. You're gonna click on make a Padlet, and you can choose what kind of Padlet you want. I'm gonna start for this one with a timeline. Let's say that you're teaching history or science or something, history of Costa Rica. Actually, I'm gonna pick Panama, which I'm more familiar with. Description, main events. You put whatever you want. This is the link here to share. So when people access this link, you copy that in Canvas, somewhere else they can access this. You can ask your students to use it to collaborate. Okay, so we're here. And again, you can change the background if you don't like this one, but I'm gonna click here and you can add your first event. Separation from Colombia, which is the main event. And I can add a picture, I can add a, a link, anything that I want. And it's gonna go there. And I can keep adding those. So as you are, sometimes you are delivering a lecture online or face-to-face, and as you speak, you wish sometimes to make notes in a way that are clear for your students. And let's say that you don't have the ability to write on the board, this can help you, because then you go 1910 events in Los Santos, and you can continue like that, and you're explaining in the lesson everything that you're saying orally. But here the students keep notes of the main event, so you can use it as a timeline. This is an example. And then you can just remake this or erase depending on what you want. You can also have the shelf. I really like the shelf. You can change the wallpaper because sometimes they have options that I'm like, that's a little too much. Well, I'm gonna use this one, and I'm gonna talk about planning a trip, to give you an example. Start posing. So I'm gonna have here a column, and it's gonna be called destination. And this is good for brainstorming sessions. I'm gonna add another column that is gonna be called purpose. And destination purpose. So I can ask people like, hey, name a destination and name the purpose. And you can share here. You click share, and you can invite people by email, or you can copy to the link to a clipboard and you share this address, and they can collaborate at the same time with you. So if my destination is Rio de Janeiro, my purpose can be pleasure. And then we can have a list. So if you have a need to brainstorm or to make them say something, and people sometimes can be shy of using the microphone or things like that, or you're concerned if they're listening, you can incorporate stopping moments in your lecture for them to say, okay, so far we have covered destinations and the purpose. I want you to please come here and type, and they can put their names next to the answer, a list of destination and what will be the purpose. Or let's say the glands in the human body, and I want you to tell me the hormones that they produce, and they can put the answers here. So that's why I like this one, because you want to see sometimes relationships and definitions, or you could want to ask people for those, and those are great. Has anyone used Padlet before? Okay. Okay. Well, you have the opportunity to have a canvas here, a map, if you're teaching geography, or your content is related to states, you need to put something about states or countries, you know. And you need a map sometimes. So it's not only the USA, you can have the world, and you need a map, and you don't find a map that can be interactive in nature, you know. You can definitely use this one and add things, options, to pick a location and things like that. And then you drop a pin and you can add text and things. similarly like that. And this is not only for geography. Sometimes in our content, we need to talk about where something happened. So Padlet gives you that option. I like the back channel option as well from Padlet because this is a mechanism for you to chat. So let's do a little test here. I'm gonna share this on the link here in the chat, and I want you to say something, if you don't mind, anything that you want. Last time I said that to a group of students, didn't go so well when they were typing, but I trust you all. Yeah, and that's, I have to be honest, you have to be careful because sometimes, students can post other things. Yeah, see? Yeah, perfect. In no time, I created an opportunity for you to engage. You have no idea how sometimes people are shy. They don't want to speak. They don't want to, they're scared of saying the wrong thing. And that's why, and again, we can have this conversation because I'm not saying what I'm saying is right. What I'm saying is like what I'm saying, it's common. You will have many students that don't want to engage, and you will see your numbers increasing by doing something like this, and you can get some candid answers. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate the feedback. That's good. I'm glad that I'm teaching you something that adds value. Again, this is free. This doesn't require a crazy fancy internet connection. This stays safe. You don't have to worry about saving. Sometimes you want to gather feedback in 2 seconds and be able to get and go through that feedback later. This is an awesome opportunity for you to do that. So I really love Padlet. Again, you have the back channel for chatting, you have the map, you have a canvas to put connections, you have the timeline, you have the shell, everything. So give it a try. I really encourage you to do so. So now I want to talk to you about the Padlet. One called Kugel. It's not Google, it's Kugel with C. And it's not Kugel.com, it's Kugel.it. It's very bizarre, I know. So I'm gonna type it here so you know. So this one is about maps, concept maps, about diagrams, charts, and things like that. But what I like is that we have a collaboration component here. So I'm gonna create a diagram, you know, and I'm gonna, share it with my friend here, to collaborate. So Scott, you must have gotten an email. And you can add all the people that you want in your class and all that, but you can also share the link with others if you desire. So anyway, I'm gonna click here. I wanna talk today about gamification, or you want to ask your students to create one. I have here gamification, and then I can add principles of what's, examples of gamification. And then you have rewards, and then you have negative feedback. And again, sometimes you can create these before you come to class. But in other instances, as you are delivering the content, I can see value of you typing and showing. So by the time you're done with your lecture or your presentation, you also have created a diagram. It's basically like you using a board where you're using your computer. So what I like about this one is that you can add, instead of a word, you can have a picture. But sometimes a picture is more powerful and you can illustrate things like that. Or you can add a link to an external website. So you can go to niconino.com to get more information. Not really, but that's just an example. And then you can have also icons. I love these ones because let's say that there's something that is completely a big no-no. I'm gonna click this one, no. See, the icon of negative. So it's not digital game-based learning, or I can change the icon to something else like, you know, the red cross, because many people think gamification is digital game-based learning. Having graphic and visuals like this sends a more powerful message, because I can tell you, people might have forgotten that I said that it's not the same thing, but when they're taking an exam and they are trying to go through this very map to remember if those are the same or not, you can definitely remember that X. You will remember that red X that was next to digital game-based learning, more so than me saying that they are not the same. So what I like about this one, believe it or not, it's more that, and you can have multiple additions to one idea, multiple ramifications. So the icons, I really like the outcome, the icons. So you can have for questions. So sometimes is, why, and you can have a code, you can develop a code, and multiple people can participate. Exactly. Yeah, Robert, thank you. Robert, do you mind sharing your experiences since you have been a user?
Yeah, what I did was I just had my students, I created a video about using Kaggle and had them do their topics and use that
Mhm.
for something like for a visual representation instead of just listing keywords to think about the relationship and what relates to what. That's basically what I did with my students with Kaggle.
Was it easy for you to use and free? Do you use
It
both?
was free. I used the free edition. It was sort of easy. I had to play around with it a little bit, but I mean, that's why I played with it first and did the video so my students could
Yeah,
could understand it. But I mean, it wasn't bad. My assignment wasn't that great because I didn't give them enough. I didn't tell them to go into enough detail. When students hear keywords, they just think one or two, or and not too much. So, but I mean, it was a learning experience for them. And some of, if you're a visual learner, that throws it out there and makes it another way to keep track of it.
great. Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned a couple of key things. Obviously, you have to play before you implement. Spend some time knowing the limitation, the affordances, and all of that. Yeah, you see Scott at this very moment, he is collaborating with me. So you see, perfect.
Mhm.
And you can have, let's say that you are delivering a class even face to face, and your students are bringing your cell phones, their computers, their iPads. You can have activities in which they complete these collaborative maps in class and make the experience fun and more organized, because you can keep social distancing in your classroom if you want to, using something like this, so they don't have to get too close to work on a final deliverable. Cool. So yeah, and again, this is an overview. If you have more questions about the tools, just uh, let us know and we're happy to chat with you about them. I have talked many times about Mentimeter, and I want to ask, because you have attended my sessions or have been in meetings where I have used it. By a raise of hands, can you tell me if you have used, if you want me to go over Mentimeter, or you are already familiar with Mentimeter for games and contests and quizzes? Any, should I go over Mentimeter? Okay, so Bridget said no. Scott said yes. So yeah, keep it going. Let me see. Okay, so please just go over. Okay, yes. Okay, I'm gonna go over real quick. So basically, Mentimeter creates opportunities for engagement with your students in terms of quizzes or feedback. So I'm gonna give an example one. I'm gonna create a presentation, and I'm gonna ask a question. You can decide, once you're here, you decide what kind of question. It can be a multiple choice, can be a word cloud that your students, work on. I'm gonna pick a word cloud, and I'm going to put low tech, and I'm gonna allow 3 entries per participant, and I'm gonna present. Let's do a little test here. Can you go to menti.com? Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you, Scott. Go to menti.com and type this code, please. Don't worry about that space, it's just visual. And tell me in one word what comes to your mind when we say low tech. So be mindful that when you are creating the account, you go to mentimeter.com. The learners, or when you are taking it as part of the activity, you only go to menti.com. That's the main difference. See, and automatically words appear and they come and show on the screen. And if they're repetitive, like word clouds, they become bigger, meaning that more people are saying that. So I like this one sometimes to collect, data, or to, sometimes we have activities in which we want to find a definition. We want to form a definition, so that this really helps. Pencil, simple, okay, cool, excellent. So that's that. But you have also the ability, let's go to type, I'm gonna create a new one. And my favorite, basically, if I'm honest with you, is the quiz competitions. People love them. So you create a quiz, example of negative feedback. Can be taking away points, saying no, yelling. The answer is this one. Okay. So you decide how much time for them to answer. If the faster correct answer gets more points, that's something that you decide. You can choose music. Be careful. I did that with music one time, and I felt I was competing with the music. I was annoyed. So I'm sure everybody else was as well. And then you have a leaderboard at the end. You can remove it if you don't want to, and that's it. I mean, you put the question, you put the example, you select the one, and after that you hit present, and in a couple of minutes I had a quiz. So if you go again to menti.com, and again, you know the answer, this is just for us to play with this. This is an excellent way to break the ice. This is an excellent way to review the materials as well. If you ask them to read and you want to know if they read and what percentage of the class read, do a couple of these, 2, 3 questions. And it's a fun way to get your students, into that competition, waking up mode. They're talking about the content of the class. They get all excited because there's a little competition. And then I'm gonna start this. And basically that sets the mood for your class. So example of negative feedback. You look at your phone and you have some minutes to talk about, saying no. Once the competition is over, you go to the leaderboard and it ranks everyone. We didn't have a winner, but here everybody will appear. You can remove the leaderboard if you don't want to, and you only want to know if people had a sense of what's happening. Yeah. So that's Mentimeter. It's free, very easy to use. Now, there's another tool called Kahoot. I used to like them both similarly, but Mentimeter.com is better. Kahoot has become expensive. You have a free version, but it's very limited. Mentimeter still allows you to enjoy lots of things for free. Kahoot they have reduced the possibilities. So I don't suggest that you use that one because of that. But yeah, something to keep in mind. Another tool that I want to show is Quizlet. Quizlet is good for flashing cards and for giving information in a fun way with some games for your students to practice them. So when you go to Quizlet and you create this one, I'm gonna create a study set, and it's gonna be called gamification definitions. That's my research, so that's why you hear me talking so much about it. So anyway, I'm gonna start with, let's say, rewards, which I'm gonna put for definition prices. And then I'm gonna put another term, which is negative feedback. And then taking away something. And then I'm gonna have another one, which is leaderboards. And I'm gonna put ranking. I'm just gonna put 3 for now. After that, I'm gonna add create. You can have as many as you want. You can add this to your class, or you can ask people to come to this site. So this integrates with Canvas well. I actually love it because you can put this in a Canvas page and it looks like it belongs. So when they have here a card, they go rewards. When they click, it flips and it shows the terms. So negative feedback, taking away something. And this is a good for studying and for clarifying. But you also have the ability to create this for them to practice. If I click on match, it creates a game in which I have to match. So negative feedback was taking away something, rewards was prizes, ranking was leaderboards. See? You can play again, or I can use another one. And this really depends on how you wanna be about the memorization. This one calls gravity, might not always work for you, but gravity, you have to, leaderboard was ranking. You have to type the answers before it hits your planet. Rewards for prizes. And then rewards for prizes. Negative feedback, taking away something. Rewards prizes. So it's an exercise for you to really make sure you have that pressure and you know the definition. So negative feedback, taking away something. Obviously, looks repetitive because I'm using just 3 words, but when you have a bunch, it makes more sense to have an exercise like this for practicing. So this is a mechanism for your students to get feedback and to avoid misconceptions, because they will know for a fact that they're not getting things correctly, but for them to also practice the definitions, the terms, or the examples. And it's free and it integrates with Canvas. So that's why I really like this one. You can also ask them to spell, what you hear, if that's important, or to write the definition instead of picking or matching ranking, then leaderboard. It depends on what kind of model you want them represented here. Cool. And then that's basically Quizlet. And the last one that I wanted to show you was full or rubrics, which is free. And this is something that can help you to build a rubric, a checklist, or a badge if you need that for your classes. So I'm gonna click here and you see the template for the rubric. It's just ready for you to put the content that you need. And after that, you hit print and see, it's ready. You can save it as a PDF or you can print it, or anything you want. So it's just fill in the blanks. And in no time, you have the criteria that you need for your classes. You can also do the same with checklists. I'm huge into checklists because we ask sometimes a deliverable, a project that has multiple components, and we need for them to have a checklist of what to include. So these are great because you can be very descriptive here, and your students know that they're checking boxes. And of course, badges, there's a whole body of knowledge about badges, and sometimes we don't do them because we don't know how to design them. So this allows me to create the image, or actually can design from scratch a badge. I'm gonna pick this one, and then my background, I'm gonna add a background. It can be any image that I have here, or I can add any graphic. Let's say that it's something about, if it's something about a flying, collecting miles, can be a plane, something like that. And then you can add color, and then you can put text that you want to have it appear here, the badge for whatever you decide. And in no time you have a badge. So this is if you want to use this gamification strategy and you don't know how to get started. You change the color because that doesn't look good at all, obviously. And you can download the badge and share with them. But this is a very easy to use tool for your rubrics, your badges, and your checklist as well. And yeah, that's what I had for this session. I think Scott and I might do another one because there are so many other cool things out there. So if there's some interest, we can definitely continue doing these demos of tools that you can use for your classes. And in the interest of time, I'm gonna stop here for some questions or comments or thoughts. Or Scott, if you have any closing remarks, Dr. Hicks.
Just wanted to say too that don't feel like you as faculty have to do all of these tools. You can ask your students to make the flashcards. You could ask your students to make the rubric. You could ask your students to make the Padlets, because I think part of learning is also being able to teach others. And it can be a great way to be collaborative. So don't feel like you have to make all these tools. It'd be wonderful to bring these tools into your classroom, especially if you're asking your students to do them, because not only then are they demonstrating what they have learned, they're also practicing it. And like you said, Miko, at the beginning, we learn through practice. We learn through applying what it is we learn as we move up that Bloom's taxonomy. So again, these are wonderful tools that your students can use as well to design learning objects or materials or activities for the class to take part in, at allowing them both to practice as well as to reinforce what it is they're learning.
Yeah, that's a very excellent point. You can not only use them yourself, but ask your students to use them. Excellent. And again, this is free, low tech, doesn't require a internet connection requirements that are too crazy. And once you can save them, you don't need that technology of internet anymore. So that's the other thing. Quizlet, once it's ready, you don't need to have it to keep it running. So
And I would add too that many of our students may have used some of these technologies in their K-12 experience. So they may be quite well versed and would really thrive and do well with these apps. So in a way, you're meeting them where they are in terms of their knowledge of some of the apps, while you provide the college curriculum that you're providing them as an instructor. What other questions or comments? I haven't seen anything in the chat about any questions. But if you'd like to unmute and then share any questions, please do. So Miko, thanks for joining us today.
absolutely, always a pleasure. Thanks everyone. If you have any question, let us know.
Take care and have a great day.